Greetings, various people across the grand and mighty spectrums of time, indeed the multiverse. I am Alexander Gordon Johans, and I am still ill, indeed. The reason that you are lucky enough to get a 3-part mini-series over the next 3 days, as opposed to one So, in the last part, I introduced our players, in the sense that I introduced the Weresharks, the Sylphs, the Farshnuk, the Bamkirsch. I introduced Lucy Dance. I introduced the Free Sylphs. I introduced the Logicios, and I introduced the Septagonoids. And essentially, the key they're going to make the multiverse make sense, right? And that's why me calling the oh no, actually no, that's, I can't mention that because that has to come later, but I suppose, yeah. The very end of this era, which I'm going to call the war era, it ends with an act that is described in a story called The Final Solution. And the reason it is called The Final Solution is that it is the final solution to the Septagonoid problem, and that the Septagonoids are a sort of species of pure logic who wants to find the solution that will make the great green nothingness go away, right? They are essentially beings of pure logic who want to square the circle and want to find a way to make a logical void. And essentially, the way the Farshnuk gets rid of them, and it really doesn't matter because like everything I'm going to talk about happens. I suppose in a sense it's like people saying, the Mass Effect trilogy, the ending is so shit, and it's like, yeah, but it's about the getting there, right? Yes, ultimately it comes down to how do you want to deal with the Reapers? Shocker, right? What matters is how you get there. And it's like, yeah, spoilers, the Septagonoids are gonna get rid of. But there's a whole lot of story that happens before then that I'm about to talk about. But I feel like, yeah, the reason why I called that The Final Solution is partly because I know I'm followed by Nazis and I wanted to tweak their noses a little. But also And there is also the fact that, the way the Tharshnik sends Sem to the Void is by sending himself there as well. So there is another reason he wants them to have a reasonably nice existence, because that also means a reasonably nice existence for himself. But that whole thing comes from the fact that essentially in the first era, the Tharshnik is the one who realizes how to destroy the entirety of reality, right? And basically, he only gets stopped from doing so because his morality pet, his Lucy, sacrifices herself. I have improved drastically. So a lot of the early stuff isn't published, and frankly, it's a good thing it isn't published. But then we get into the second era, which is war. And really the first act of the second era is, well, funnily enough, it is the events depicted in Laura, Queen of the Earth, in the sense that Lucy Dance, basically she comes from a society that has basically been that was involved in Green Eyed Nothing, right? In the sense that this is the William Dixon Wright Farshnook that has given his future female self to the Bamkirch. This is the Farshnook that has, that has made peace with an army of zombies. This is the Farshnook that would go on to create the ultimate key to ending all of reality, right? And then be stopped at the last minute by Lucy's sacrifice, right? But this Farshnook plasticlone the plasticlones basically say, okay, you need to turn right the fuck back around and you need to go save your universe, go save the 100 million universes. But they're gonna need help fighting off the revolution first. So we are going to send forth a champion to help the 100 million universes. And they select Lucy Dance. William Dixon Wright, the William Dixon Wright plasticlone, comes forth, selects this parallel universe version of Lucy, and this hardened badass who has fought against plasticlones her entire life, is a trained soldier, and sends her off that essential idea of of the Logicios landing and small groups of people holding out and making a fight back attempt against them, which is then helped by Lucy turning up and sort of basically helping them use sylphs so they can properly fucking fight back against the Logicios. Because remember, the Logicios, right, they did this because they think they're going to get their asses whooped by the Septagnoids in the long term. Right? They wanted to have a walkover, to turn up, quickly go, take over, and have a whole load of new production facilities, right? Armada coming back. They are enough to basically scare the Logicios into making a hasty peace. And it is from this peace that the United Civilizations of the Multiverse are formed. Of the Multiverse, and as far as the Logicios are concerned, right, you just go out expanding, right? We'll fight the war, you colonize for us. You get us more troops. We don't care, we'll let you do your own thing. You've got to let us take ourselves because we're still a bunch of misogynistic bastards and we could crush you if we wanted to. So you've got to let us do that. But otherwise, you know, you give us troops, you give us armor, you give us food, go out, colonize, we're gonna be busy fighting the war. And so the United Civilizations of the Multiverse are basically left to their own devices. And then we and already you might be beginning to notice that, like, this is a lot more structured than the first is. Right. That's a hell of a notch on your fucking bedpost. And also, probably likely to be good for you in the long term. You know. So, and also at the same time, right, remember, this is a Lucy that the Great Farshnook has basically been manipulating the life of his entire time. The Great Farshnook, knows Lucy's. He is the champion of the Sylphs. He knows them. He can manipulate them. He has been manipulating this woman her entire life. And so, but Lucy doesn't know this at this point. She just goes, hey, great. He's interested. Fuck yeah, I am too. Next morning, she starts shrinking in the middle of the queue. And by shrinking, I'm not talking about weeks of any ship service, you're kind of making sure everything's functional. You're finding out the little quirks and the kinks, and maybe you need to top up supplies of this and that, and maybe this wasn't repaired properly, and maybe it turns out this is actually dead and wasn't. Like the first few weeks are always a bit. They're the parts of a ship's run that kind of are a bit sort of dull anyway. So Lucy misses that. And basically just turns up as they meet with the Carixi. And the Carixi are basically a race of sentient sharks that, thanks to a bunch of sentient octopuses that they live with, actually, I've explained the difference between sentient and sapient before. So these are a bunch of sapient and sentient sharks and sapient and sentient octopuses, and thanks to the octopuses basically developing tools and engineering and taking over the land, the octopuses have basically built the Carixi, I suppose the equivalent of like diving gear for humans, in the sense that they have built the Carixi, sort of almost cyborg arms and legs with like a sort of water rebreather system, so that the sharks don't dehydrate and they get their oxygen, and the Carixi are, but they're basically Krogans, right? They're big, tough, badass creatures. Badass people. And obviously Carixi generally talk via body language because they're sharks, right? Sharks communicate via body language, and so essentially the Ublopnik, as the octopus race are known, they have basically developed sort of implants that will convert basically this Lucy becomes amazing friends with a female Carixi called Greta. And so, because Greta's a Carixi, like, she is this great, huge shark with cyborg arms, massive person. And, there's Lucy, this pretty blonde young woman who's also a sylph, and they make quite the double act. And they encounter the arachnoforms basically being like spiders the size of cars that are fully sentient and sapient and have like cultures and have their own culture, and like wear clothes and can blacksmith and stuff like hang them upside down over their babies. Well, and like poor Greta, you know, is outside of her suit, so she's like slowly dying, and Lucy has to go and get help. And then, you know, it's like, you know, because Lucy is a Last society does not have to farm the lower class herbivorous societies, and the humanalaste then become, you know, a valued part of the thing. And it's like, you know, there are all kinds of different alien societies. I mean, but in general, these alien societies are all basically different kinds of creatures that evolved to take the places of humans, or that if they didn't take the place of humans, they, you know, they became sentient enough that they then overtook humans, and now, you know, humans are farmed on their worlds, and that's obviously another thing that's like, okay, those can be sylphs now, but you need to eat cultured meat because you don't fucking. Incidentally, cultured meat his entire, well, not his entire life, but her entire life, as part of a grand plan so that he can leave an heir to act in his stead and essentially liberate society, liberate the multiverse from the tyranny of both the Septagonoids and the Logicios. And the could this happen? Can that happen? And so the only way you stand a chance at making this work is if you can just literally have in every single platoon, squadron, every single tiny element of the grand army of your multiversal empire, if you can have someone capable of leading that army in a semi-coordinated fashion, right? And what that means is you need to have someone in every army who will think the exact same as every other leader of every other army. And that's why having a Lucy who can lay eggs of herself time after time after time after time works. An equivalent military force to the Logicios, which is now the United Civilizations of the Multiverse, or will be at some point, is if they are able to appeal to all of the sylphs that the Logicio Empire is being run on, and if the Farshnooks cannot, if the Logicio's tactics cannot work against them, which is multiverse and backed up by the Ublotnik and the Corixi and the Arachnoforms and the Humanolaste. She is backed up by all these great races with all this great strength and might. So she's not necessarily much of a fighter, but she can coordinate. She's got the military might. She knows how to fight tactically, and so she can lead the cocking armies. And because she because she can be there in the room where it happens all the time, everywhere within the United Civilizations of the Multiverse. And similarly, she can do the same for the Logicios. And because she's a sylph, and she's that hardcore a sylph, she can take a lot of punishment as well. By women, right? Although it's an odd kind of matriarchal society in that it is a matriarchal society that is very much sort of exploiting women and exploiting the women who lead it. Because, you know, they're fighting against a force that could end the multiverse, and at the same time they are fighting against a force that has empire. And basically what she does is she turns people into toys to make them into products to sell. She gets this made legal under doctrine of the United Civilizations of the Multiverse, and basically ability to make infinite food and possessions, and like they don't need, like their society can function without money, and everyone can be happy and plentiful. But what they need is troops to fight the multiversal war, and what the Bam Kirsch needs is troops to help her colonize different universes. So what she does is she takes a certain amount of the combined military capital that she extorts from the people, because even if she makes money by selling her toys, that money is then used to buy military capital. It's used to buy guns and ships and, you know, and weapons and soldiers. And she takes this certain amount of military capital, a certain cut of the military capital, a power base to exploit, and having new areas of trade of her toys. That is why the United Civilizations of the Multiverse grow so fast. Because it is a thing that you will notice when you read The Toymaker, is that the Bam Kirsch is very much aware that she is not operating by her own in her own universe, right? There are so many different Bam Kirsches who are basically doing the same thing, who are also going out to explore the multiverse. And so this is where you get part of the multiversal law at this point in the war, is essentially the Bam Kirsch experimenting with and upgrading the logic of what her toys can do. And now I need to blow my nose, so and this is also where you get the introduction of fairies into the kind of multiversal mythology. Not that the fairies ever really show up again, but you know, this is where they originate anyway. And it is also, you know, the Venus Trap is so named because basically this is how Galaplacidia, the seventh elder god, comes back from the dead. And this also is where kind of you get closure on the events of the first era, with essentially the Lucy who effectively sacrificed herself to save the multiverse, meets up with the Unleasher that became of her William Dixon Wright and her Tharshanook. And it's also where, you know, a Lucy Dance, and I think a Greta as well, meets up with these characters, right? I suppose at this point the Venus Trap, you know, it's canon, it happened, but like, I suppose the multiverses in which those meetings happened, things will have happened differently, right? Like, in other words, like, the events happened, and the lore of it is improving over time. And so the Venus Trap was kind of written before a whole lot of this other stuff was really thought about much in depth. But it very much, it comes around this point. Because this is when essentially, like, whilst the rest of the Elder Gods are focusing their attentions off so Defexicolomancy is Lucy's owner. When the Great Tharshanook is dead. Although obviously Lucy, because there are so many of her, Lucy has so many different owners. But, you know, Defexicolomancy is off, you know, sending her heroes to help, you know, patrol the multiverse, and you know, the Bamkirch is off playing the not everywhere. United Civilizations of the Multiverse are not everywhere, and neither are the Logicios everywhere. But basically, Galaplastia, she is focusing on making herself everywhere, because she is the most powerful of the Elder Gods, because she did not have her power diminished by execution and exile. You know, she died and came back, but she died and came back in very different circumstances. And so, for her, she distributes herself across basically every different universe, and in the position of basically ensuring that things don't get too bad at home whilst all these different forces are distracted, right? And this is where we get into like fanfic ideas that Sherlock Holmes was a version of the fast Chinook that was working for Gala Placidia and stuff like that. Robin the Controvoxy coming into it. Right. And I need to pause again because my nose is horrible because I'm ill. So the Controvoxy were created to be the ultimate horrible monstrous aliens. Because basically, up until this point, there really have not been any actual aliens in the multiverse. Going out to boldly explore the universes, but basically there's a massive war for the sake of the multiverse going on. There really isn't much point sending humans out to explore outer space. Send them to explore where you know there is going to be life, because you need people to fight in the war. basically the aliens were going to turn up to essentially do to us what the English and the British did to the Native Americans, which is to basically turn up, say, this is ours now, and commit genocide. So, and kind of this was written at a much different time. Well, it wasn't written, but it was the idea was thought up on at a much different, more optimistic time of my life, and this is why kind of politics starts to interact with kind of how the writing develops, right? Because really, the Controvoxi were created at a time when I was feeling very optimistic about the possibility of Jeremy Corbyn leading Great Britain as Prime Minister, but when I was also kind of a bit feeling a bit wary and feeling like I needed to write a cautionary tale about, you know, the dangers of being too pacifistic, right? And so the idea was that the Controvoxi were going to turn up and they were going to start, you know, essentially and you know, I think one of the things that was being tried was that, like, you know, maybe the Controvoxi were essentially holding all of the different leaders of the world in essentially sealed force fields. That, like, you know, you could try to leave them, but they would literally just vaporize everything that touched them. So, like, people would try to leave and they would just die from touching them. And so the Prime Minister is basically trapped in Parliament. You know, sort of desperately trying to coordinate an effort to make peace with these aliens, because apart from anything else, right, into essentially a table, right? And she's just like, she is now going off to find her new toy, and kind of ends up getting involved in the fight back, and in the end, essentially, she does succeed in making peace with the Controvoxi, because she effectively that was the original idea, and it didn't happen. It didn't get written, so it's not canon. But that was the original intent, and then kind of I started writing a kind of fantastical culture-like society thing and that just collapsed. But as it was collapsing, the idea of the contra by the time I got around to writing the Controvoxi Survivor, I had gone from, yeah, Jeremy Corbyn will totally be PM, but oh, we should be a bit worried about his pacifism, to, we're fucked, we need revolution, right? And so really the Controvoxi Survivor, for all it is an awful lot to do with me exploring the idea of, women toy maker who were in Laura Queen of the Earth, right? In the sense that the Farshnuk from that particular story is in the Controvoxi Survivor. So maybe, Laura Queen of the Earth didn't happen, but some other set of events happened, right, whereby Lucy saved the day and the Farshnuk, and that particular Farshnuk was there to help her, right? Some sort of event that had a similar basic idea happened with that Farshnuk and with that Lucy. Okay, so the Controvoxi Survivor's got a lot of stuff going on, And then there really isn't another big piece of writing for a while. Not until you get to Fuzzy Logic. And Fuzzy Logic essentially is so named because it is about the development of a generalized artificial intelligence that has gotten a grasp of the fuzzy logic of human thinking, right? It is all about the development of an AI that is capable of thinking and feeling and understanding humanity. And this is where you get Omega coming into it. And also within the sort of the second era is where you get what I call Pan Goat, the Pan Multiverse Good Time Association. In that actually is a story that has been written and is canon, but is not published yet. And maybe I should publish it because it'd be kind of fun. But it was meant to be kind of a special tie-in for the Venus Trap, should that ever have gone forward to be sold as charity. But basically, that's never going to happen now. The Venus Trap just exists as a NaNoWriMo project that is available in parts on my blog. But Pan Goat basically is what really introduces the Pantheon properly, and what introduces the kind of character of Yoram Kastiftan. And, you know, I suppose maybe I might publish that at some point, I'm not sure. Maybe once I've gotten the my words are running out. This is not good. Maybe once I've got the WordPress blog, the WordPress website up and running, I might, you know, throw in the Viorum story, the Pan Multiverse Good Time Association story, as part of that. But I don't know. I mean, it's going to be a while before I've got that up to date. I mean, frankly, even if I do write anything, I think it's going to be a while before Oxide Survivor for a reason, and it is about him playing a part in a revolution to make peace with the Controvoxai, whilst at the same time exploring the themes of submissive women who want to be eaten by Controvoxai, right? And sort of trying to put people off their dinner. Whereas by the time you get to Fuzzy Logic, right? It's like, you know, you get BDSM themes into it. This is where you essentially have someone who is jealous that they didn't get to be picked by the Bam Kirsch, and they watch their friend become a toy of the Bam Kirsch, and so they've got their own Lisa now, but they're feeling very bitter about it, and so they mistreat the Lisa. And Lisa, by the way, is the toy that is made at the end of the Toy Maker. And so, you know, this woman scorned is trying to create an artificial intelligence so that the war can be fought, and toys aren't and people aren't needed to fight in the war, right? Essentially, she's hoping that if she can create a perfect soldier by creating, she's hoping that if she can create an artificial life form that can be copied and pasted endlessly into combat drone bodies, that then the more complicated, right? You need to explain what the fuck is going on, right? And you can't necessarily count on the intelligence of the people reading your stuff, because Lord knows part of a big problem with Laura Queen of the Earth was that essentially people didn't even read the context in the one bloody story. So expecting people to keep track of context across multiple different stories was going to be a bit of an ask. And so the Farshnook becoming more aware of what his other selves had done and being able to say, ah, yes, I know this because this happened in this story and that story. That kind of helps hopefully keep the audience on track a bit more. And so the Farshnook is getting more powerful, and that's kind of part of it. And it's also, right, essentially, you know, the Toy Maker introduced the idea that, you know, the Bam Kirsch is now going around turning women turning, you know, men and women into products to be sold, right? And into toys, and the Contra Survival was exploring the themes of predation as kind of sexual fetish. And so Fuzzy Logic is in part about the creation of a new kind of toy that is basically, I suppose, a takeaway ready meal for predators of women, or, you know, people in general, in the sense that it's like, you know, these are people who are wereshark sylphs who come with an off switch and who can be, you know, and who will gladly be devoured time and time after time. So, you know, multiple things going on in Fuzzy Logic. And then really It's fucking weird. Kind of why I don't do it a lot. Well, no, the main reason I don't do it a lot is that I generally record stuff as and when stuff catches my attention, and the risk of recording stuff in advance is that something will catch my attention that is very time reliant. Anyway, that was the war section, because of course I've already talked to you about the final solution, which was the story that ended the war period, that ended the Great Septagonoid War. So I suppose go read, go read the final solution after you have read the Venus. After you, I suppose, if you want a rough timeline of what to read, then you start with Laura, Queen of the Earth. Here's shit come, stuff like that. The table of what does what. And so that partly is why I am going to have to remake Laura. I am going to have to do a proper, Lucy dance walking the 100 million universes story, because I need that bit where I can see it. But yeah, read that. Then read The Toymaker. Then read The Venus Trap. Then read The Contravoxi Survivor. And then once you've read the Contravoxi Survivor, read the once you've read the Contravoxi Survivor, read Fuzzy Logic and read Valkyrie, and then you wrap it up with the final solution. And that's what's in the war sort of period of stories so far. Oh, and there are a whole load of other shorter stories as well that are part of it. A whole load of other distraction fics that are part of the grand multiverse as well. Yeah. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap up this episode and hope I'm not too zonked, and so I can record the third episode. Wrap this all up, because the risk is that if I don't, there won't be an end to this, and it will just be there lingering. Anyway, see you later! Thank you for watching my main channel. Please